Big Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. That
Voices
sounds like a skinwalker to me.
like a skinwalker. Yeah, it sounds just like a skinwalker where they the dark magic.
Yep.
And the next one is in Boise, and Boise is our biggest city in Idaho, which is it's not very big at all. But there's the green belt. It's a beautiful river that goes through right through the middle of the city of Boise, where there was a lady who's jogging early in the morning, and she saw a bipedal wolf that was walking the creek bed. It was just walking, and she stopped and she was looking at it, and she says it turned around and it looked at her, and they locked eyes, and she freaked out and she took off running, and whatever this creature was just kept walking its same, minding its own business, didn't even mind her, and then again, we live in the Magic Valley, so which, there's a lot of magical stuff here. I believe there's a lot of witchcraft. There's a lot of weird things that happen, and there's this lake called Lake Cleveland that is about an hour and a half from my house. We go camping there every year, and so one year we were up there, and it's about 4,000 elevation, so you have to drive up there, but we're camping up there in this campsite, and there's nobody else in this. It's like a cul-de-sac kind of a loop where different campsites are out, and there was nobody out there, just us. And all of a sudden, late at night, around midnight, we see another fire at the fire pit, a ways down this road, and I tell my wife, I'm like, "Did you see somebody drive up here?" She's like, "No, I didn't see anybody drive up here," and we knew that. I was like, "Wait a minute, so somebody hiked up here?" I'm like, "That's a hell of a hike." I'm like, "That's weird," and so, we think nothing of it, just some hikers that hiked or whatever, 4,000 feet up a mountain at midnight, and so, and during that night, I heard a goat. I heard a goat, and my wife is like, I'm like, "Did you hear that?" She goes, "Yeah, it was a deer." I'm like, "Babe, that was not a deer. It sounded like a goat." And she's like, "Oh, it was a deer." And we went back and forth. And so I was sketched out about that. I didn't sleep well that night. And in the morning, I go walk into that campsite, and sure enough, there's a pentagram right there, and there's animal bones all around this place, like they were doing satanic worshiping and sacrificing or whatever out there, which was really crazy. And so, now we go out there, we definitely take heavy duty firearms, and we go on because we're not going to let these people in their dumbass ways push us out of enjoying God's creation and going camping and fishing and making family memories, right? Like we're going, and if something happens, then we're going to be ready. But that
Yep.
same mountain is the same area is called Magic Mountain, and there's a story of the old man of Magic Mountain, and the report goes, the stories go that it's a Bigfoot that is really old in age, and the report that actually made the news is this guy's out there chopping wood he's cutting wood with a chainsaw, and he says he sees the old man of the woods. He says it's a Bigfoot about 8 foot tall, and he looks kind of grayish, and he's walking like an old man, like he's hurting as he's walking. And he says he walks to a tree, and he takes a break, and he leans on the tree like he's trying to catch his breath, and he looks back, and they lock eyes. He threw his chainsaw, left his wood, jumped in his truck, and left, and he didn't go back for a year. When he went back is when he did the news report. They actually went up there to the same location, and he pulled out his chainsaw was gone. Somebody must have took it or whatever, but the chain to the chainsaw was still there, and he pulled it out, and he goes, "Man, this is mine." And so that's an interesting story. And I know Toby has some from his dad. I mean, his dad lives in Wendell, which is, I mean, it's in Magic Valley. He's got some stories that will make the hair on the back of your neck rise up. And so if you would like, we would love for him to share what he's got with his family.
Okay, Toby, take it away.
Yeah, I want to share a couple historical encounters here and some people that have shared with me, and then I want to talk about some of my family's experiences here with Sasquatch or Dogman type cryptids. The reason I put a small Sasquatch sticker on my vehicles or I'll wear a hat or a t-shirt is because with some of my encounters as a youth and as a young boy, it traumatized me. And I don't wish that on anybody because it'll give you. I've been a bereavement, death, and dying counselor for over 25 years, dealing with especially vets from World War II era to Vietnam to the current wars. I worked for a hospice organization, and I've seen over 300 some passings of people that were very precious to me. And so I've been trained clinically with how to deal with people with PTSD and things like that. And it has been some of the greatest privileges that I've ever had, helping these individuals work through some of their grief before they go and meet the Lord. And so in my own life, looking at some of the experiences, traumatic experiences I have, I'm not saying that I have PTSD because I've never been diagnosed, but I've got some of the symptoms of it and some of the fear and things like that. And so early on, I just started putting little symbols out there that people would recognize. So if they wanted to talk with me, they felt safe and they were in a controlled environment where they could share their heart. I had an audio engineer from our church come up and talk to me. He says, I saw your Bigfoot t-shirt. And he says, I don't believe in Bigfoot. But when I was 10 years old, we were in the South Hills, is where Rock Creek Canyon originates from, which is a split off from Jarbidge. He said, I was 10 years old back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, and we were camping in a trailer, and I was sleeping in the top bunk, and something started violently shaking our camp trailer, and I looked at this window, and I'm eye to eye with this hairy creature, and I think it was a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, but I don't believe in those things. And he says, I have night tremors to this day. Well, about a year and a half after he shared that with me, he started sharing how he felt and the fear and the things like that he had. And he says, you know, Toby, since I've been sharing that with you and talking with you, I can sleep and I don't have the fear that I used to. So I'm getting over it, but I don't believe in it. And I always just kind of laugh at that, you know. You have this experience, but you don't believe in it, but you're sitting here, you have a testimony here that
Yeah, you've got PTSD from something that was imaginary. Bigfoot doesn't believe in you either.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, here's the thing: if these creatures manifested when we did drugs, we were drinking, or things like that, the nightclubs would be filled with these testimonies.
Yeah.
You know,
I was talking to one of my friends about this recently, and it's kind of hilarious that, you know, it's all like, oh, well, some kids got chased out by a Bigfoot, but, you know, they were drinking beer and smoking weed, so it was a hallucination. But all the kids that are drinking beer and smoking weed at a nightclub aren't seeing Bigfoot.
Right.
Yeah, you know what's actually going on there? Because it's not legal for them to drink beer and smoke weed. They have to go way out in the middle of nowhere and hide to do it, which happens to be where Bigfoot is. See the connection there, guys?
Yeah, come on. Exactly. My family's been in Idaho for about 3 generations on both my mom and my dad's side, but my dad wasn't born here. He was born in Nevada because my granddad was a contractor. But they settled in the city, a little tiny town called Kimberly, which is along the Rock Creek Canyon. It's 7-8 miles from Twin. Follow the canyon, follow the water, follow the creeks. You'll find these stories. And
you notice how I mention that a lot on my shows. That is really a truism. They like to hang around by the rivers and creeks and stuff.
So I've got what I call the Idaho Project that I'm starting. And in the 8 counties that I serve, I'm going to be backpacking to the headwaters of every little trickle and every little creek and every little river. And I'm hoping that I'm going to get education on the waterways that I look over and I serve. But I'm thinking that I might have an encounter or two or find some photographs that would be great taking. And if you're interested in that and that story as it develops, I'd love to
Absolutely. I'd love it if you'd come on the show and share updates on what's going on to that. Just make sure if you're in areas where they're giving you the hint that you should leave, that you take the hint.
Yes. I'm learning that. I know that fear, that feeling of dread very, very well. And but
well, the other displays too, you know, the teeth clacking, trees shaking, roaring, bluff charges, you know, throwing stuff at you.
Yeah, I've had things thrown at me. I don't think I've ever had a bluff charge, and I don't want to. Now, I carry a backpack with me, and I'm one of these guys that if I get stranded right now, I got enough for 3 days to survive. I'm good. But when I go in the bush, I'm even better prepared. And I always have a clean pair of shorts. I always carry a butt wipe and wet ones. So,
In case you see one, you're well prepared.
well, I've had some old crap hit the fan yet instances, and I'm glad I had that extra pair of shorts and those wet ones because they clean up real nice. I can get over the feeling of a dog licking my butthole with using wet ones. I'm good with that. I'm used to that now, but in the past I wasn't. So wet ones, audience, carry them. Carry extra underwear. It's good. You're more comfortable. You won't get chafed. You carry lotion because after you've yourself, it can get chafing, and a little lotion will make it more comfortable from experience. I promise you. Anyway, sorry about that, Duke. But
No, that's no problem. I always thought it was kind of hilarious, people saying that when they saw Bigfoot, they were going to shart themselves or something. And I was like, when you see Bigfoot, your sphincter is going to be puckered so far up inside you, it's
yeah,
going to be parallel to your
yeah,
navel, and
yeah,
nothing's going to be coming out. So don't worry about it.
yeah. The pucker factor is high. It's 10.10 on the Richter scale. I know that one. But
Yeah.
again, audience, and because of COVID, you want hand sanitizer, but wet ones and clean underwear is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know.
so
Taylor was telling me one of my favorite stories about that. He was sleeping in his car in his favorite Bigfoot research area, and he had to take a whiz. So he gets up, gets out of the car, like takes 3 steps. That's all you want to do. Get out of the car, take a whiz. So he takes like 3 steps, and he's standing there taking a whiz. And there's like a cloudy sky, but there's a full moon, so you can see a little bit. And he's looking at the ground around where he's taking a whiz, and over to his left-hand side, there's like this yellow seashell. And he's in
yeah,
the middle of the continent. He's going, "What the hell is this seashell doing here?" Then he realizes there's a line of these yellow seashells, and they're descending in size. And then he's like, his vision clears a little bit more, or like part of the clouds go past the moon or something, gets a little brighter for a second. Those aren't seashells; those are toenails. There's a Bigfoot standing right next to him, watching him take a whiz. Talk about
did
a
he whiz on
sphincter
his feet?
puckering moment at that. Yeah, that was luckily for him. It was a Bigfoot he already knew, but it scared the living bleep out of him. Obvious.
Was that Scooter?
Yeah, that was Scooter.
I know the story well. I play it over and over, and I get a laugh. But wow, yeah, that's hilarious. My dad, like I said, he was born in Nevada, but my granddad, we've been in the area for 3 generations, and they settled. And my granddad built a house, and my great granddad on my dad's mom's side was the mayor of Kimberly. Well, my dad was about 5 years old. They were living in a house called the Old Arnold House, and the train tracks run along where Rock Creek is because there used to be an old stagecoach out there, and they ran the tracks out there so that the stagecoach didn't run anymore. So a lot of history, a lot of old history here. And so when they moved in the Old Arnold House, my dad said that certain times of the year you would end up making sure the kids and the livestock were put up by 5, 6 o'clock in the evening before it got dusk or about dusk, because animals, cats, chickens, small dogs, and even goats would end up disappearing. And one day, as my dad's getting ready to go to bed, this is one of these old farmhouses where you got the huge picture windows where, on one side of the house, as the sun comes up, the heat's coming in the house, and as the sun's going down, it's putting heat in the house. It's a way to heat the house. And he's about 5, 6 years old, and he sees coming from the tracks in the yard what he says is what he calls the whistling bear. It's a
Oh
bear
God.
walking on 2 legs, and it's whistling, and the ears are moving, and it's whistling, and it's the ugliest bear he's ever seen. But he's got a traumatic fear, and he's got experiences that he hasn't even talked to me about this thing. And as it comes to the yard, it eats the dog food off the front porch, and from that point on, when that starts happening, you don't feed the dogs outside. The dogs don't
Uh-uh.
want to go outside; they want to come in.
Yeah. Well,
And
next thing
so,
it's going to eat the dogs too. That's a GUGWE
right,
bear. Walk a crazy bear. Walk around on hind legs, look like bear. Whistle. GUGWEs whistle to each other. That's a GUGWE.
yeah. And so my dad, he's freaked out, and like I said, a little later, as he's getting older, there's a lot of bums that that would ride the train. And I did that one time. I went with a hobo and spent some time in the world learning. I learned a lot of interesting things. So I never jumped trains, but because my food bank was feeding homeless and the down and out and things like that, I wanted to know these people's life perspective. So I took a couple weeks off and ran around with the guy. And so with my dad's story about my dad would always bring the hobos home to where my grandma was, and he'd always feed them Spam sandwiches.
Nice.
And she said, "Why would you bring these guys home?" He says, "Well, Jesus always feed the hungry, and we've always got Spam," because my granddad would always fix his famous Spam soup, where you put boiling water and throw chunks of Spam in it. And my dad said it was the most disgusting thing you'd ever eat. But these Spam sandwiches with mayonnaise and lettuce and stuff, it was food for them. Well,
Hey, fried Spam is a freaking delicacy if you live in Minnesota. That's where Spam comes from.
But what had happened at certain times of the year, my dad said these bums say it's not safe to be around because there's people disappearing. And so I remember those stories of my dad that these guys would ride the trains, that was the train track again was along the creek in the canyon, because that's just, it would unload feed and unload. It was an agriculture area. And these bums, certain times of the year, they knew not to be around because there was something taking their buddies. So
yeah.
My grandma would
Greg
say,
Yost did a report on his channel about that, one of those areas down near him where the hobos had this little camp that they were staying in, and they all just kind of deserted the area because something kept making them go disappear. Some was eaten, apparently.
Well, until recently, the city of Twin Falls started making the Rock Creek area into a family-friendly park. And there used to be hobo camps that my kids would take bottled water down and bologna sandwiches to feed these guys. And then all of a sudden they abandoned the camps. And then my boys thought it was real weird. And I remember these stories that my dad told me about the whistling bear and the hobos not being around a certain time of the year when it would come through, because they'd disappear. And I started investigating down there. And I didn't put two and two together. I didn't know what a GUGWE was or whatever this whistling bear thing was. But I'm thinking, if it was down there, it's the same canyon. It could travel up. And so I started not allowing my boys down at certain times of the year because, being a hunter and knowing different migration patterns of large game and things like that, it was wisdom at the time. Now you can't find any hobos down there. I think the city of Twin Falls goes down there with the sheriff's department. If they find them, they clear them out. And we got another story about that later. So my dad moved away to Washington when we were young. And I moved back, and I ended up moving them back about 3 years ago. And they live in a small city about 30 miles away called Wendell. And something you got to know about the Magic Valley is 100 years ago, when the bankers and the cattlemen came to this area, they saw that this desolate land could be a paradise. And they created a canal system like you wouldn't believe. For hundreds and hundreds of miles, they built these huge reservoirs. They dammed the water, and if you bring water to it in the soil of Idaho, it'll grow. As long as there's the temperature that the plants can survive, we've increased our game as far as conservation goes. I'm a conservationist. Our elk population, our 3 species of deer, it's thriving, and we've reintroduced wolves, and there's a good population of elk to feed the wolves and the deer, and they're more plentiful than it's great hunting down here. And with that, with these canals, I got a friend of mine, I won't share it right now, but I'll share it maybe another time, about a lot of people from there's a group of astronomers from College of Southern Idaho. Well, I got to share it now. Group of about 30 of these astronomers that would go out pass between a city called Jerome and Wendell, and they'd go and stargaze in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock
right.
in the morning.
No light pollution out there, middle of nowhere.
Correct. And this buddy man, there's this place called Red Bridge Road, because there was a lot of quarry work done, and there was a lot of red dirt and things like that, and that's why it got its name. And there was this little impression where they could go, and there's no light pollution. They could gaze at the stars, and there was some kind of a lava cave system down there, which is all over southern Idaho. And him and his buddies were there. They're astronomers from CSI, and they're looking at the stars, and they see these red amber colored, they thought they were taillights of a car, And then they hear this growl, and it scared the crap out of all of them. And as they're all throwing their telescopes in the back of their vehicles and they turn on the parking lots, they see this thing, and he thinks it's at least minimum of 12 feet tall. Now, to get an accurate height, I don't know, but it starts to charge him, and it's growling. And when it stops, my buddy says, "Where is it? Where is it?" And he says, "Well, when you turned on the parking lights of the truck, I think it's about 10 feet from the bed of the truck." And he goes, "Oh God." And he doesn't even turn around and look in. He just gets in, starts the vehicle, and his buddy says, yell at everybody, "Do not turn on your headlights. Let's just get the heck out of here." And they started their vehicles up and they leave, and they never return. And when somebody goes to report this to the county, they filled that cave system in where there's no access to it, and they leveled the ground out where there's no longer an impression. So that's kind of interesting. That's really interesting. So
Yeah, very similar to what happened with Jeff Friend over there on the East Coast, where he trailed something through the snow, looked like Dogman tracks, and it went to this cave, and then he came back to go check out inside the cave, and the cave was suddenly covered with a big steel wall.
yeah, what's really interesting is when I talk to different the BLM here, and I've gotten to know the head manager here of this area. A lot of the cave systems now are under lock and key. You can't get in; they're barred. And I'm going to try to get permission so I can go and maybe do some documentation, just photos and things, just because I'm interested in. And so far, it looks like I'm going to get some permission.
These are 3 toes. They're walking with 3 toes. 3 toes. And the footprint is look at that. What is this? Guys, it's starting crazy already. I just got here. I never seen these 3 toes. Look, there's a good one. Can you guys see the 3 toes? They had equipment out here on this, out here sitting in front of this cave. They started sealing the front of it up, and they didn't just seal it up. They put a sheet of that tin on the outside of it, and then about a foot in, they put another sheet of tin going up, and then they filled it in the middle with concrete. Okay. Quads or something. It was like all concrete. So we kept going in from the top after they sealed all this off. And we spent the night in here and had a lot of bad things happen out of this place. And then they went ahead and sealed the top off. So now you can't even get in there whatsoever. But look how beautiful this place is. Before they sealed that off, this place was just amazing.
To look at some of these caves and just take some photos and stuff, and they're going to give me a set of keys, hopefully. So that'll be interesting to see what I can find with that.
Yeah, bring a gas mask and some tear gas with you in case you.
But with my dad moving back to Wendell, the point of sharing the story of Red Bridge Road is that big canal that runs along there where that creature was living. On the outskirts of Wendell, where my dad lives, there's the high school and there's some of the big canals. And my dad, he's got a little schnauzer, and my dad loves his dogs, and this is the only dog he has left. And my dad's 70-some years old, and he's as mean as nails, tough as hide. And he's out walking his dog 2 or 3 in the morning, because when everybody else starts their rigs to go to work, he goes back to bed and sleeps because he's retired and he's worked hard all his life. And he's walking his little dog. He's not too far from the canal, and he begins to smell the smell of what he called the whistling bear. He says, "Toby, I smell that bear smell." And it scares me. And the little dog goes crazy. And so I just pick her up and I go back to the house. And my dad's had a lot of injuries working hard, and he's worked his body into the ground to provide for a family. And he can't shoot a 12 gauge anymore. So I bought him a little 32 Magnum pistol. That's about what he can shoot. And he carries that in his pocket. But when he gets that vibe or smells that smell certain times of the year, he just leaves and goes home. Well, there was one night.
Hey, you know what's legal in all 50 states and you can wear it from a sling on your shoulder? A flamethrower.
I don't know if he can carry the weight of it.
GUGWEs really hate flamethrowers, I can guarantee it. Anything with hair doesn't like flamethrowers.
He doesn't like yeah. So last fall, my dad was walking his little dog, and he smells and he looks at the dog and things like that, and he smells that smell and he feels like he needs to get the hell out of the area, so he does. Well, that night, for 3 or 4 neighborhoods, he could hear the dogs raising hell, but these dogs are raising hell like they're scared crapless and they don't want to be around whatever this is. And he hears something running in the field that's opposite his house. It went through a portion of a subdivision that's being built. These dogs are raising holy heck and going, art, 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 and just are scared. And his little dog pees on itself. And as he opens the door, he's listening and he can hear something. He says it's large, running. He can hear it hit the ground, run, jump a fence, run. And he said it stops. And it was like probably just 3 or 4 meters from the front of his house. He can't see, and he can smell that smell. And then it starts running, and as he does, all the dogs in the area are just acting up and howling and barking and trying to get into the house. You can hear dogs' nails on the doors, and it freaks him out. And that was, like I said, last fall, and he's had a couple other encounters that were similar to that. But one that really, really, really got his attention was a few weeks back. We had a fresh snowfall, and he's sleeping, and he wakes up in the middle of the night, and his dog is just cowering under the blankets, just shivering. And he feels that something is watching him through his bedroom window. And in his mind's eye, he says, Toby, in my mind's eye, I can imagine this tall, I don't know what it was, but it had a snout. It was black, and it was huge. And he said, I just began to pray, and the presence went away. He says a couple hours later, he gets a little white dog, and he gets his pistol, and he goes out with a flashlight. And I said, Dad, this sounds like a bad horror movie. And he goes outside, and he's looking in the snow, and about 12 to 15 feet from his window. Now, you got to understand his window in this old house that they're renting. To look through the window, I need a ladder. I need a 4-foot ladder to get up where I can see through the window. And these tracks are 12 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet from the window. And he said that they were the size of his hand, and they look like, he doesn't recognize the print, but he can see 2-inch claws protruding out of this track that's almost as big as his hand, as a man's hand. And he said the stride, he measured the stride, and he said it was 5 to 6 feet, the stride, and it was upright walking. It wasn't like something on all fours. We've hunted bear, we've hunted mountain lion. We grew up in the woods. We grew up hunting and things like that. He says, Toby, I don't know what this thing was. And he said, my blood ran cold. And he says, I don't know what this thing is. Since then, he's gotten thicker window shades so that hopefully it can't look in. But he's had a couple more times where he's felt that, and he's just got up and he's just prayed the blood of Jesus, prayed God's angels over his house. And when he does that, the feeling goes away. But he says, I felt like this thing's marked me or stalked me. I saw something similar when I was a kid. I know the smells. I know the sound. And so he's just kind of going, I don't know what to do with this thing. I said, well, Dad, your best thing is to pray. When I got time, I'll do some investigating. I'll take Chewy with me, maybe my other son, and maybe we can go into the next episode. We went down. I'm a glutton for punishment because in my youth, I used to go down and where I would know where people were doing black magic and spells and things like that. And I got stories, not tonight, but later on, where I'd go and I'd find these altars and I'd tear them down and I'd pray and I'd put anointing oil on them. So there's a thing with me to cleanse the land of these evil things that are happening, because I believe that these when people do that I can show you in scripture where the land absorbs the things that man does.
Leaves it staying on the land. Absolutely. That's how lands get cursed from too much of that stuff.
Right. So, and like I said, biblically I could show you through the word, but not tonight unless you want. But so I was going and I was breaking these altars down and praying over them, and it started to affect the land where crops were growing better, economic times were getting better. I mean, I think it was originally was doing something good. I was just being led by the Lord. And I had a group of adults when I was 15, 16 that, that were following me, and they're saying, Toby, we don't understand this, but it's working. Well, when God speaks and you're obedient, things happen. It's not a no-brainer. But so I told Chewy, I said, let's go down Halloween night. And this was 2019. And let's bring my son. His name's Patrick. And he was working for Fish and Game for the fisheries as an intern because he's into that type of work. And so here's another individual that works for a state agency. And Chewy, myself, and my son, we go to the entrance of Rock Creek Canyon, where the city is making it to a beautiful place where you can jog and have family picnics. And, let's bring the kids, bring the family, while they probably know that these cryptid things are down there, because I've talked to county commissioners about Sasquatch and Dr. Meldrum up in Pocatello. Anyway,
Yeah, the Sasquatch are the least dangerous of the potential cryptids you can run into.
But here's a county commissioner that's behind wanting to help make these areas parks and make them safe. And he's talking to Dr. Meldrum. I'm talking to Dr. Meldrum. I've only talked to him once. And he told me the county commissioner, and then the county commissioner and him and I, at some point in the city meetings and stuff, we crossed paths. He knew about me and I didn't know about him, which was kind of weird, but whatever. That's no big deal. And so we're going down Halloween night. We're going down 10 o'clock, I think, Chewy. Yeah, we're going down 10 o'clock. We're gonna stay down there until 4 in the morning. And down in this park, we've had, Chewy has photographed footprints. We've had sightings, day sightings. We played peekaboo with one, and we can tell you about that a little later. It was kind of fun. I threw a rock at it and hoping it'd throw something back. But so we're going down there 2019 Halloween, expecting to find some people doing some stupid stuff, some demonic things and stuff. And I'm packing. My boys got a firearm. We feel somewhat safe. We go down there, and Chewy likes to play. The siren Bigfoot call. Have you ever heard that call? Yeah, and let's start with that one. And then we did some what we thought were some DOGMAN calls that we got off the net and stuff with a Bluetooth speaker. We push the limit sometimes. And so we're down there, and we're walking through, and we can hear. I pick up a rock and I do a rock clack, and we hear an answer to it. So we're kind of excited. We're getting some action here, We're not seeing anybody down here doing any dark magic, but there's some possible cryptid activity going on, and we're going down there. And I said, Chewy says, let's go through the area where we found the prints in the soft sand along the creek. And we're looking, and we're not finding anything, and we're coming along. And I got a spotlight, and Chewy's got one, and my boy has one. My boy is not scared of Sasquatch, really. My boy is not scared of Dogman as much, but he's scared of Wendigos for some reason. And that plays into the story later. And my boy he's pretty ripped. He's physically fit. And we're walking, and I'm in front. My boy's in the middle, and Chewy's behind us. And we're about 40 to 60 feet from the creek. And as I'm spotting the spotlight, my son begins to scream in a high-pitched voice that I've never heard. And he's just going, ah, ah. And he gets behind me. Ah, I see it, Dad. And Chewy goes, what the hell is that? I see it. And I didn't see it, but my son, who works at the time for Fish and Game, and Chewy, he's a pastor, they see it. And they see something that looks like standing in the creek. And my son describes a hairy biped creature that what he thought Sasquatch would look like. And the eye shine, I think, was greenish color. And he said, Dad, these things, the eyes, and we're 40, 50 feet from this, and it's standing in the middle of the creek, and the eyes are like 6 inches apart. And then we hear a whoomp, where something threw a large bowling ball sized rock, and there's no rocks down in there that size to throw. You'd have to pack it quite a ways away. And so we hear that, they see that, we hear that, and boy draws his pistol. I said, son, that's a 9. You're just going to piss it off. I have a 41 Magnum. I said, I might be able to get a headshot maybe that close, but we're not shooting anything. Let's just kind of leave. And then we hear on the other side of the creek, we hear something in the brush, turn around to look, and this creature is gone. It stepped out of the creek. And I said, Chewy said, let's go. We've been down here a few hours. We saw something. We got confirmation. Let's leave. And Chewy says, but let's go through the area where we saw the prints. It's along the way. And so we're glutton for punishment. We're going through the thick forest where all these gnarly trees are, where it looks like Lord of the Rings. And Chewy and I have had experiences where we were down there. We know this area. We could do it with our eyes closed, where we got confused and we got lost from each other. And there's no way to get lost. And until we find the trail, we find each other 20 minutes later. These are experiences we've had down there. We've seen orb type things. We've had encounters down there where him and I were 2 different times in that same area where there was some kind of a creature that was invisible, but you could see the outline of it. You could see through it, but it was like light being bent. I can't explain it. And it was creepy.
We got a picture of that here in Coloma last summer when I had somebody up there with me, and they had a feeling something behind them was watching them. Turned around, snapped a picture, and we got a nifty picture of something standing there bending the light around it, like maybe 5 feet from her.
Yes, and tall grass being bent over, but there's nothing there. And the light orbs and the white smoke that comes out of nowhere, and the in the canyon, the mist that comes, and it's a summer day, but there's a mist coming, white smoke coming from somewhere. And so that's the area we're looking for this creature. Just as Chewy and my son saw it, we're going to go back through that little area to see if we can find any more sign before we leave. And as we're going through there, all of a sudden, my son even yells even louder, and any more of a little girl voice, yeah, Dad, it's going to get me. And no more than 15 feet, I draw my pistol. I see horns. And my son knew this Wendigo was going to eat him and take his soul. And what it wasn't a Wendigo. It was a full-grown mule deer. If you would dress it out, it would probably be 200 pounds after you dressed it out. It was huge. And it had maybe 4 or 5 points on it, each side. So it was and it was coming towards us, but its back leg looked like it was almost twisted off. It was still attached, Duke. I'm not kidding you. Something had grabbed its back leg and tried to twist it off, and it's just hanging there by tendons and skin, and it's coming towards us, and it's limping, coming towards us. Thought in my head is, they're hunting. We interrupted a hunt. Yeah. So I thought, I'll shoot it in the head, I'll cut the leg off, leave the head, and I'll take the rest of it, and we'll be good for winter. And she goes, Toby, that's not a good idea. Let's just leave. So as we're getting out, we're being escorted out of the area, and we get up there, and my son is just freaking out. And I said, son, let me drive. And we get in his Honda, we come back to Chewy's, and we open up. Well, the next morning, I'll just tell you, the next morning I had a great headache. We got into the good scotch and the good whiskey and the bourbon and the 18-pack of it. We drank it all. And we usually don't drink like that, but we had to deal with the reality of stuff. Excuse me, it changed my son's perspective of things. And later on in this last year, he works about 40 miles from the house for some fisheries because he wants to be a fish farmer and a fish technician. And as he's driving early morning, he sees this creature on the long side of the road that is tall, long, and slender. And it's got claws, but it's white, but it looks like a human that's starving, but it's not human. And it scares the hell out of him, and he can't pass it. He gets on the other side of the road waiting for it to do its thing, and it jumps the fence, and it runs off down towards the Snake River Canyon. And he says, Dad, and he got past it, and he calls me. He says, Dad, I'm scared. I said, why? And he told me this creature he saw. He says, I don't know what the hell. Why me? Why do I got to see these things? I said, welcome to my life, son. And I said, what do you got on? He says, I got a 9mm carbine rifle. I said, well, you should be all right. I said, just go to work. Well, in that area, dogs, cats, chickens were disappearing. And the local Idaho boys are pissed off because their livestock and animals that they love are disappearing. And he goes, Dad, I don't know what it was. And he did some research, and there's this creature, I don't know if fictional, if it's real. They call it a rake. I don't know what it is, but what
that's the new name they cooked up for a ghoul that people have been describing for thousands of years.
Yeah, Chewy just poked me saying, yeah, Toby, because we have a friend of ours that told me, Toby, that rake thing, that's creepy pasta. That's a gold. And, he said with 9mm carbine and machete, he should be all right. But anyway.
Yeah, they're actually not renowned for being all that vicious and aggressive. If they think that you're an easy target, they might try and take you out.
Yeah.
But generally, unless there's like a group of them or something, according to legend anyway, they'll leave you alone, especially if you're armed.
Yeah.
And this comes from the old Arabic word gul, Ghul, ghoul. Is
Okay.
where our version of ghoul comes from, and it's the same thing. And they haunt the wastelands. And as long as you're armed and there's like more than one person, they're probably not going to mess with you.
Well, apparently in our canyon we got him because he saw it, and he goes everywhere with that rifle. But
Yeah, according
I'm
to
gonna
legend, they eat the dead too. If something's digging up the corpses out of the graveyard and eating them, or digging tunnels into the graveyard from underneath and eating them.
yeah, it's which that leads us to another encounter. My wife's first encounter. We were up in the South Hills, which is along the Rock Creek Canyon, and we were at a place called Ross Falls, and it's about a 1,500 feet in elevation. It's quite the hike, and when you get up to the very top of the mountain and the ridge line, it's all shale. So, and we come across some things which look like, we heard things in the thick brush, and I told my wife it was probably deer. I don't know what it was, but you could hear something large moving through it. And along the trail, you wouldn't want to be up there without hiking boots because that shale rock, it's sharp. It'll rip you up. And along
Oh
the trail,
yeah, yeah. Even with good leather boots on, it'll cut your leather boots up.
so Chewy sent you a picture of a footprint, and this footprint was across the trail in the mud going down into a holler. And there's no way a human could go in the holler. My wife says, "Is that what I think it is?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." She goes, "No, I don't believe in this. I don't even want to talk about it. Let's get out of here." So it was good for her to maybe her husband isn't crazy. Um, but I'm gonna turn it over to Chewy so he can share with you guys a couple other episodes that we've had with these things and this last Halloween, which was amazing.
All right. Thanks, Toby.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. So this the canyon area, just to give you guys an idea, um, Toby is right. We've gone down there several times on our lunch breaks. We'll go down there and hike and talk and just look around. And we've gotten lost, confused in the thickets and places where you shouldn't get lost, and they just get kind of disoriented. Like he said, we've seen mist just form out of nowhere, like a white smoke kind of a thing. Really interesting. But what he found down there one day was a tent that was ripped up, and the campsite was thrown everywhere. And there was actually empty bullet casings around this campsite, but there was no people. There was nobody there. But somebody had a rude awakening by something, and it tore the hell out of their campsite. And then he went back the next day, and it was all cleaned up, like it was covered up. The city or somebody just took everything out and made it look like nothing ever happened. So that's just to give you guys an idea of what goes down there. And there is also a story that a lady shared with me here from Twin Falls, and I sent the pictures to you, Duke, of it's a sketch that she made of these creatures on the canyon rim. And she says she saw them. There was, I believe, 3 of them, a big one and 2 smaller ones. And she said that they were just staring at her as she was walking this place. And the place that it happened is called Devil's Corral, which is just across from the canyon from us. And another thing is an encounter from the same area, Devil's Corral. There was a guy and a girl were camping out in a tent on the canyon rim, and she says that a Bigfoot stuck its head inside of her tent and looked at her and her boyfriend, and she passed out. She fainted from fear, and he left her. He actually left her. He got in his vehicle and he left her there all night. And she woke up and he was gone. And she had to stay there in fear the whole night until he came back the next day to get her. And so that was another interesting encounter there. And
So let me guess, she was on Tinder probably the next day. And,
I would assume so. We found clothes that are shredded up, like a jacket, a pair of pants that are shredded and thrown way up 30 feet in a tree. And we found shoes out there, just little kids' shoes. We found a stroller way out in the middle of those woods, just abandoned out there. So a lot of really creepy stuff out there. And the whole missing 411, you know, the first documentary film was filmed an hour and a half from my house in
Yeah.
Idaho Falls, Pocatello area. So there's a lot of weird stuff that happens. You know, speaking of the 411, my mom's ex-boyfriend by the name of Rosendo, his nephew came up missing, and he's still on the Idaho Missing Kids Project. You know, you guys could look it up. His last name is Morales. I forget his first name, but he's a 2-year-old kid that came up missing in Gooding here in the Magic Valley. So what happened was that the kids were outside playing, and then they just noticed sometime that this little one was missing, and so the police came out, the search dogs came out, and they followed his trail. The dogs got a sniff of his trail, so they followed this trail across a field, a long field, and it goes across an abandoned train yard, and it goes through another field, and it goes down to this creek about 2 miles, about a 2-mile hike that this little 2-year-old went on supposedly, and the trail, the dogs couldn't pick up a trail at the riverbed, and all they found was his little shoe was at the riverbed, and they drained the river. They didn't find his body, so they assumed, they still say like he's still missing, but the family thinks like he fell in the river and was taken down the river. But that hits close to home about this, you know, the missing 411, where weird things, where little kids travel crazy distances, and he's only 2 years old. You know, it's like there's no way. So I think that something took this little kid, and he's still never been found. You know, so and another fun story that I told you about, Duke, is the whole GLAG series with Kevin. So Toby was watching the GLAG series on YouTube on his TV, and he ordered pizza. And as you guys know, Kevin and GLAG, this is all Idaho territory. So the pizza guy comes to drop off the pizza, and he has the door open, and Toby pushes pause, and Kevin's face is on there on one of his. He goes, "Hey, that's Kevin." And Toby's like, "You know who that is?" He goes, "Yeah, I know him from such and such place in Idaho." But he had no idea about the GLAG thing. He had no idea that it was about the Bigfoot. But that just shows you the craziness of it. The freaking pizza delivery guy recognized Kevin, and it was just weird. So that was just a and
he's all like, "Wait, weird... Kevin's famous? When did this happen?"
It's true weird stories. So our last trip, this past Halloween, we go down there, and we are very well prepared because of our last year down there. You know, we had all that activity. So we go down there, and we start walking around. We don't have our lights on. We're just being really quiet. I have a bunch of fat from brisket and prime rib steaks that I've been storing up. I trimmed the fat, and I've been freezing it. So I took this pile of this beef fat, and we went down there, and I lit a fire, and I put this beef fat on there, and it just filled up that whole canyon with the smell of this beef. And so we're walking around, and we start hearing clacking. We start hearing the rocks clacking. We're hearing like the brush moving, twigs breaking, and everything. And I kid you not, we hear chatter. It's that samurai chatter. It was right across the creek from us. We're on one side of the creek, and we rarely cross the creek because we know that's like that's the unwelcome territory. We know, like, we stay on one side. If you go to the other side, it's really creepy, and like nobody goes to the other side of that creek. And that's where we heard the chatter, and it was really amazing that we heard it, and we're like trying to talk back to it, trying to make our, trying to imitate the talking, but it never replied to us. He heard it at first, and he goes, "Did you hear that?" And then I just kind of stopped moving, and sure enough, it was a deep man-like voice that was doing like a samurai chatter, which was pretty trippy. It's like they were talking to each other, as they were watching us, probably wondering if they should come beat us up and take the meat that we had grilling. Every time we go,
they're probably wondering if you brought any extra for them, or if you were just going to bogart all of it.
Well, I always hope and pray that they like white meat and not dark meat when we go down there. So, so I think that was pretty much it for our Halloween adventure.
You know, Duke, this is Toby. My wife has had an experience with those entities, and in my childhood, I've had experience with the little people called Kirkenvorki. They're Finnish leprechauns, and we've got other things. If you're interested, just let us know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
we
definitely do a follow-up show with all that. For this one, I think the only thing you guys didn't really mention was about the lava caves.
Oh yes, so the lava cave down there. So I go down there with my wife and my kids. It's like a family destination. It's you know, you could look it up. It's the largest lava cave in the world actually. So you go down there and it goes for miles and miles. Oh, it's called what which one is it called? It's the Shoshone Ice Caves is what it's called. And then there's a Mammoth Cave down there too. Just these massive caves. So they go for miles down there, but for the public, you're only allowed to go about half a mile down there, and then they block off the trail. And so, you know, you can't keep walking down there. So I go down there with my wife and and we get about I only get about half less than half a mile down there, and it's just pitch black. You have your flashlights, and it's creepy as hell down there. So about the half mile mark, I just couldn't take it anymore. And there's a sign up there that says that about a cave bear. There was some kind of creature down there that the natives, they described it as, it looked like a bear, but it only stayed in the cave, and so they nicknamed it the bear cave. And so on our way up, I asked this guy, the guy that kind of runs the property. I asked him if anything weird has ever happened, and he told me that a family went down there and they never came back. And this happened years ago, and that it never went on the news. That nobody ever found out about it, but that they had all kinds of investigators down there and people search and rescue going down there trying to find this family, and they never found them. And they assumed that they just went past the half-mile mark and got lost somewhere down the caves and never came out. You know, and they also say that the cave system connects to the canyon because there's all kinds of caves in this canyon system, undocumented ones. I mean, who knows where the heck they lead? And
So I'm
you
assuming
know,
even the big ones you're talking about, the spelunkers haven't completely mapped them.
exactly. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And
And
the bear
so
cave that they're talking about there, could that be, by chance be a whistling bear cave?
it could possibly be, man. And so I didn't find that out until I got out of the cave. You know, thank God, if I would have heard that about the family going in there never coming out, I never would have taken my family. But we went down there. You know, I sent a video of that to of that little entry to Duke, and it's just this massive cave. And
Wow, are you kidding me? We're we are about to step into the largest lava cave system in the world. Are you kidding me, dude? Wow, this is so sketchy. How many creatures are down here, guys? Wow. Dude, this is really freaking sketchy. Come on, guys.
you know, there's signs everywhere. It says stay on the trail, do not leave the trail, and it's just a beautiful
Do not
area.
feed the whistling crazy bears in the cave.
I love it.
You know, and the caves, man, they connect here to the canyon. And so like these canyons go for hundreds of miles, and the cave system is just endless. So who knows what kind of creatures or what goes on. They can just snag you, run in the cave, and I mean, you'll never be seen again, you know. And so,
No.
and again, that the cave systems are just north of Twin Falls, about 20 minutes. So it's just a quick drive out there to go and experience that. So
Yeah.
that's our cave story, and I won't be going down there again. Toby's
No.
been trying to get me to go down there, him and I together, and he's the overkill guy. He every vehicle he has, he's got shotguns, 300 Winchester mags. He's got all kinds of guns everywhere he's going. He's got the overkill. So I definitely feel if I had to pick somebody to go down there with, it would for sure be him.
Yep, tear gas, flamethrowers, all that kind of protective gear you need for caving. Oh, Lord. Yeah. Well, anyway, totally awesome. Thanks, both of you guys, for coming on the show and sharing so much with us. That was like a massive amount of stories. And I got a feeling that you guys got just about as many other ones that you didn't get to share yet. So we'll definitely have you back on the show again if you're willing to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And like I said, this is Toby with the thing I'm calling the Idaho Project, with mapping out these different headwaters and stuff. I'm going to try to take a lot more better documented pictures and things like that. And then if we can get into some of these caves that are under lock and key, it'll be really fun to record some things with that if you're interested.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I used to do some caving myself back in the olden days before they made it illegal for people to go into caves for some bizarre reason.
Doesn't surprise me with the government we have. Well, Duke, thank you for letting us share these stories. And the reason why we do this, yeah, we do stupid stuff and we push our limits, but it's like we want people to know, man, that the truth is out there, and the government is not our friend. The government is not here to protect us. I mean, they know these creatures are here. They know they're taking people, but yet they don't do anything about it. They have this whole canyon is open, the trails, the cave systems are open, and they're trying to make them more suitable for families to keep going down there. So it's like, dang. So we want people to know the truth, and if they have had encounters, they could look me up, Chewy Ortega here in Twin Falls, and there is we've prayed with lots of people. We've helped them get over the trauma, or deal with the trauma, I should say, of having encounters like that.
The trauma is real. I got PTSD from my first encounter back in '72. And if you go listen to some of the 10,000 million episodes that Sandwich Chronicles has done by now, on Sasquatch Chronicles, you get a bunch of people that Wes talks to that they've had really bad experiences in their life, in addition to having either a scary sighting or an actual negative encounter with a Sasquatch. And the ones that have the military background, some of these guys have been in, like serious firefights, real serious warfare, seen, tremendously bad things. And they claim that their worst PTSD is from the cryptid experience. And the military experience wasn't even close.
Wow. That's pretty intense. That's heavy stuff, man.
It makes sense to me in a way too, because if you're fighting humans and stuff, at least you know what you're fighting. But when you're dealing with these things, you have no idea.
Yeah, and especially when the government says that they don't exist, and that's what I love about Toby, him being a federal investigator. I mean, he's had some of the highest ranking people here in our region talk to him about portals and how Bigfoot is federally documented, and I mean, it's just and it's real stuff because it's federal agency.
These people have PhDs and they know their stuff, and I don't know how they know that I know about this stuff, but they just mention and see my reaction. I just kind of play dumb.
Like, I don't know, what's this sandwich clause that you're talking about? I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
Crazy bears, never heard of that.
Well, yeah, we'll be totally down to share our paranormal stuff and the crazy stories we have here in Idaho of all. I mean, because we live in the Magic Valley, so there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on.
So, yep, I'm sure Idaho doesn't appreciate you wrecking their tourism industry in one fell swoop of 2 hours. Good job, guys. Everybody's going to listen to the show and go, we're never going to Idaho for a vacation. Hear me now, kids. We are not going to Idaho. I don't care how much you beg.
Don't you want to pet the whistling bear?
Yeah. Don't you want to pet the crazy bears and get chased by a dog man, Dad? No! All right, you guys. Well, thanks again so much for being on the show, and we'll have you back again.
All right, Duke. Thank you.
Thank you, Duke. Appreciate all you do.
You're very, very welcome. And to everybody out there in listener land, always remember the usual abjurations still apply. Do not punt the puckwudgie. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't flip off the mountain giant. And whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee. Good night.